Thank you for tuning into our seller interview series. Up today, we've got an Amazon Associates business for sale in the sports and outdoors niche. Created in January 2016, this business makes $2,025 per month in net profit, and the listing number for the site is 41055. We do these interviews to give potential buyers more information about both the seller and the sites they're looking to purchase. We hope these insights are helpful for you in making a buying decision. We've got the seller with us today to go through the business and cover everything from niche selection to traffic and monetization. How are you doing today, Josh?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking, and thank you for making the time to get this done here.
Yeah, happy to.
So before we dive into the questions that I have for you today, I want to go through and give a quick summary of the business. Again, it was built in January of 2016, has a monthly revenue of $2,230, expenses of $205 to make for a net profit of $2,025, and this is built on a 6-month average. Included in the sale of this business are the domain, site files, and social media accounts. The buyer will also need to pay for the first year PBN maintenance fees. Josh, can you give us a little bit about your background in building and running online businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been building websites, specifically like affiliate websites where we're ranking the sites using SEO. I've been doing that for over 3 years now. And it really started as something, and I imagine this is the case for a lot of people, it started as something that I was just really experimenting with. And eventually I found that I was actually able to make real money with it. And it was that I sold one of my first websites actually. I sold with Empire Flippers a few years ago. I can't remember exactly how many it was, but it was when Empire Flippers was first opening up to sell other people's websites, not just their own. And so I sold one of the sites with them, and it actually funded a trip to Thailand, which allowed me to then, I ended up moving to Chiang Mai eventually and really doubled down on this business and started creating more sites. So I've just been continuing to kind of scale this up. I eventually kind of hired a team from around the world to help me build these websites. And now we have kind of a full production. So we have over 40 websites that I'm managing that are in different stages of kind of being built or being ranked or earning right now. And I'm also sort of regularly selling them when they kind of reach a certain stage of maturity. That's sort of part of the business model, is to sell them. So I just listed a 4th site. So I currently have 4 sites on the Empire Flippers marketplace right now, and this is one of them. And I'm planning to kind of continue. This is sort of the business model. So I'm going to continue to, as sites reach a certain level of maturity, to put them on Empire Flippers and sell them.
So like you mentioned, you have been building sites for a few years, and now you even have a team to help you run everything. And we'll get into what exactly that team does versus what you do week to week in a little bit. But my question for you is, since you've been doing this for a while, how did you come up with the idea to start this specific business?
Yeah, so we have a process with these Amazon sites. We're looking at a balance of how much a product costs and how likely it is to sell on Amazon. And we're kind of estimating those factors to see how much money can we expect to make from the traffic on this site. And then we're balancing that with can we rank for this kind of keywords for in this niche? Can we rank? And, it's sort of how competitive is this niche? And how much interest is there in general? How much traffic are we going to get to the niche? I actually have a number of spreadsheets where I crunch the numbers and kind of come up with different estimates and different scenarios. How much is, each visitor going to be worth, making a guess at that and making a guess at how much traffic we could get, in different scenarios. And we come up with these ideas, and then we just go ahead and build a site and start, building links to it and see what happens, really. And I think my process is useful, but then there are also surprises all the time. There are sites that I think, I don't know, you might as well give it a try, but it's probably not going to be one of the really big wins. And then, that turns into, a few $1,000s a month or more even. And it's wow, that was really a surprise. And then, of course, as you'd expect, I have a lot on the other side, which are I see there's other sites ranking for it. I think I can rank for this. It should be no problem. And for whatever reason, Google just doesn't favor me and we can't rank for that particular niche. Or, sometimes happens is the particular product where, we think, well, this is an easy win. And then for whatever reason, we get ranked and people just don't buy the product very much. I have a site right now that's like, it's ranked number 2 for like all the keywords. So it's getting a healthy amount of traffic. It makes like $100 a month, which is, for the kind of business I'm doing, that's pretty like abysmal. That's right. I mean, it pays for hosting and stuff, but not a whole lot more than that. So we have, anyway, so it's kind of summarized, like we have a process of estimating these things. And then a lot of it is just kind of building enough sites that we get really good results from some of them.
And you said that you do a lot of research into multiple niches, multiple genres of businesses to see, what could work. And then this just happened to be one of those that did work, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this is one of the things, I mean, maybe this is an obvious thing to say, but I think this is a real advantage of being a buyer. And presumably the people listening to this are more sort of thinking in the buyer mindset. And, if I had the resources to start as a buyer and maybe do some building on top of that, I think that would be probably cut the learning curve quite a bit because, so many, at least a number of the sites that you build or that I've built just fail and, maybe unknown reasons. So, it's one of the real advantages of being able to start by buying a site is already, successful and then building on top of that, I think is a real advantage.
So I think that this question has already been answered, but I just want to clarify that there's not more to the answer. Your business model is that you build these sites and then you sell them. You flip these sites. I don't know if actually flip is the right term because you're not buying and then selling. But anyway, so you build these sites and then you sell them. Is there any other reason why you want to sell this particular business?
Yeah, that's the primary reason is just sort of that's how, because, I'm investing a lot into the building. So the real place that I make money is on selling these businesses. So part of it is, just to sell them and, make money, have a profit from them, take that out of the business, put that into other types of investments just to diversify, from a personal point of view. A very related sort of aspect of this is just, my team is managing 40 sites and we just at some point we kind of reach a certain capacity of being able to actively build on all the sites that we have. Like this site, for example, I think that there is a lot more potential in the kind of stuff that we could do with it. But we also have 39 other sites, or something. That's not an exact number, but anyway, we have 39 other sites that have potential and that we want to, put our resources into and build them up more. For us, it's really just a balance of figuring out where's the best place for us to put our resources into and where would be a better opportunity for us to just sell it and let somebody else who has, more capacity or, a different skill set to leverage their experience and build this into something bigger, or just sit on it and, earn from it. That would be fine too.
You mentioned that this business, could be suited for someone with different skills to be able to take it farther. What different skills are you talking about? What opportunities do you see for this business that you're unable to tap at this point?
Yeah, great question. So I can kind of break it down into 2 different sort of categories from my perspective. And one would be kind of the things that I personally would do if I had, more resources at my disposal. And then the other is stuff that I don't really actually know how to do, but somebody else maybe who have the skills, or maybe they're just willing to really put the energy in to learn these skills. I think that there's a big opportunity there, but I wouldn't really know how to do it. So for this first category, the stuff that I would do if I had the, more just if I had sort of the time, if we weren't working on 40 different sites, and this kind of stuff I'm happy to advise a buyer on because I think it is an area where I have, a set of knowledge around it. This would be that more SEO stuff. So ranking the site for keywords that, maybe there's a number of keywords where the site is ranked number 1 for them that we've been going after and it's ranked number 1, and that's awesome. But there's also a lot of keywords where it's ranked somewhere on the first page, maybe even somewhere on the second page. And those, I think, are really big opportunities if somebody has the skill set in ranking websites and SEO or, wants to learn that. people have probably seen this kind of thing before, but there's like a exponential amount of traffic you get from ranking higher. So like the person who's ranked number 1 gets like 33% of the traffic, and then the person ranked number 2 gets like 15%, and then 8%. And then even by the time you rank number 5 or 6, you're getting a lot smaller percentage. So really getting into like that number 1 spot or the top 3 spots can have a really, really big change in the amount of traffic you get and therefore the amount of money you're making. So ranking the site, moving the needle to get the site ranking on a particular keyword, maybe from number 5 to number 1, could have like a really drastic, improvement in the earnings. And, my team would totally do this. It's just that like we're trying to do this for 40 different sites and for, probably more than, 1,000 keywords across the site. So, but I'm happy to sort of advise on that front. And then related to that would be, again, this might be obvious, but related to that would be adding more content that's, in the niche or in a very related niche. I've seen people do these on sites that they've bought from me, do this kind of thing on sites that they've bought from me before. And it seems like it can be a really way to really add a lot of value to the site. Yeah, so those would be the 2 things that I would definitely recommend doing if that's a skill set that people have. And then there's this sort of other category of stuff that seems like a great idea to me, but wouldn't really know how to implement exactly. That's things like social media. So right now the site has like social media accounts, but they've really just been set up just for SEO, just to make Google feel like, okay, that there is a social media presence for this website. But I haven't done any like marketing. There's no real like significant amounts of traffic to come from social media. And I think that there is an opportunity there, maybe for like Pinterest, for example, because of the sort of product nature of this site, to do some Pinterest marketing or do some like Instagram stuff or Twitter stuff. I mean, I think that there's definitely an opportunity there. Or even, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking that like, this is a niche that has a lot of passionate people in it. And maybe something with like Facebook where could be kind of like a community kind of thing created could be a big opportunity for somebody as well. Additionally to that, right now there's no email list associated with the site. And again, that's just because like that's not really a skill set that I think me and my team really have at this point. But I think that there's a big opportunity also for an email list. You could, capture people's emails by offering them some kind of like, looking at like, the biggest discounts on this item, for example. I've seen other sites that do that and I'm like, wow, that seems really interesting and really effective. So something like that. And then, following up with them, are you still interested in this item? Or of course, related items, following up on an email sequence could be another way to add really a lot of value to the site relatively quickly if that's something that you have the skill set for or that you're willing to just put in the effort to learn that skill set.
So it sounds like the main reason that you and your team are not currently, actively pursuing these big opportunities is because of time. You have a bunch of other sites that you're also working on, and that also comes down to why you want to sell the business, just to clear up some space for your team. When you're trying to build 40 sites, it doesn't work out as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, this is like the way I, see the world is really like I see a lot of opportunity. I see a lot of options of cool, exciting stuff to work on. And it's really just like a matter of where do I think that I have the most leverage. This is, also applied to MediaShark Publishing, which is the name of the business that I own that builds these sites. Where do we have the most leverage to work on stuff? I'm really interested in cryptocurrency. In my free time, I'm like interested in learning more. But like, it's not, if I said, okay, we're changing the business, we're going to work on cryptocurrency, we don't have any leverage because we're not like good at that by any, in any way, shape or form. So, my team, what we've built, like we're really good at building these websites and getting them ranking initially. And then it's really just like the most high leverage thing that we can do to just keep doing that right now. So that I offer these suggestions as things that like I would love to do. At some point, maybe we'll sort of take the next step and go into more of like a building them out, building a more full kind of, communities, email list, that kind of stuff around these websites. But right now it's sort of like the highest leverage thing that I've built with my team is just build the website and get it ranked.
You're currently selling and monetizing within the US, Canada, and UK markets, correct?
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is a business that could capitalize upon expanding into the remaining Amazon markets?
Yeah, potentially. I know that like Amazon Germany, it's like one of Amazon's biggest marketplaces. And this has been it's been kind of like just a time thing that we haven't gotten a chance to do that yet and to give it a try. I mean, I don't know, there might be more of like a language barrier there with the German market, and maybe that's a bigger project to like create a German version of the site or something like that. Other than Germany, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like Amazon's expanding, they're getting bigger. So any kind of more internationalization that you can do because it's potentially a big opportunity. You know, we have a lot of sites, and depending on the niche, you know, a lot of the sites don't really even make that much money from Amazon Canada or Amazon UK. So part of why we haven't prioritized that kind of thing is just because, you know, not all our sites are, you know, really make that much money even from those two, let alone from ones where like there might be a bit of a language barrier. But if it's something that somebody could, you know, really invest some time into, you know, and also like even with Amazon Canada or Amazon.co.uk, you know, there can be sometimes there's some optimizations that you can make by like working with like, is there different terminology that people use in different parts of the world, even within English language? I think that there's probably also some opportunity there if someone's willing to put in the time for it.
You build a lot of sites. Even when you're done building this site and working on the site, you're going to continue building a lot of sites. Is there anything that you learned from building this particular business that you will apply to future businesses that you build? Did anything go really well?
Yeah, that's a great question. This particular site ranked really quickly, much more quickly than most of the sites that I build. Most of the sites, you know, they might take anywhere from like 6 months to a year to get them really ranking like on the first page and making, you know, a significant amount of money. And this business ranked in like 4 or 5 months, I think, which was really surprising to me, actually. The frustrating thing, and this is like one of the challenges of this type of business model, is I'm not really sure like what specifically we did with this site that made rank more quickly than other sites. If I did, then we would do it for all, you know, we'd do it for every single site. But yeah, I'm not really, to be honest, like I'm not really sure if we learned anything really that actionable.
But regardless of that, something went right.
Something definitely went right on this side. I mean, I think that's just maybe interesting information for somebody who's considering buying this business, is just that little fact of like what's special, what's unique about this business is, you know, one aspect is just how quickly it ranked. I mean, you know, it could be some kind of randomness in the Google algorithm that just happened to pick this site, you know, getting a little boost, a little bonus or something, and happens to pick some of my other sites, you know, as getting a little bit of a negative, something that's kind of hurting their ranking a little bit. There's sort of been a hypothesis for a while among a number of SEOs that there's some sort of like random factor built in to make it harder to really like deconstruct how the Google algorithm works. Like if there's some randomness, it'd be much harder to deconstruct it. So if that's the case and this has some kind of like a random bonus, well, that's cool. You know, then like that's potentially something that can continue, that site can continue benefiting from. And maybe even, you know, if a buyer were to kind of expand it into related, you know, similar niches, related products, then maybe that bonus could kind of continue. I'm not really sure though. Yeah, it's a really good question. I wish I had sort of a better answer for it.
Oh, not a problem. No worries. So you mentioned that this site took off much faster, and, you know, it might be some level of randomness, as we just talked about. But either way, the site took off much quicker than other sites. You know, it listed at the top or near the top within the first 4 or 5 months. So is that where the primary bulk of the traffic to the site comes from? Does it come from the Google searches?
Yeah, it's pretty much all organic searches, or at least like 90%. That's where my team and I have been just completely focused, is on organic traffic. You know, and it gets some, and, you know, it's Google is where we're primarily focused, of course, because that's where, you know, the traffic, the majority of the traffic, but it gets some from the other search engines too. And, you know, a depositor can, of course, make like, you can look at the clicky analytics and really dig into it and see, you know, exactly where everything's coming from. But it's really primarily organic. I also wanted to just to clarify something that you just said there. when it started ranking in the first 4 or 5 months, it wasn't ranking like, we're not talking about it ranking number one for any keywords or anything. We're just talking about it like hitting the first page and starting to get some income and some traffic. It's really been like just continued, even within the past like month or so, like since I submitted it to Empire Flipper, it's been we've been in the vetting process and all that stuff. It's still continued to like have some keywords that, creeped up a little bit, went from, ranking number 4 to number 3 or something like that. So I think it's kind of like actually continuing to sort of slowly appreciate value in the search engines as the links age a little bit more, which one factor that might be helping it rank. And as just the site ages a bit more, there's sort of more trust that Google has in it.
I apologize for insinuating that it is ranking number 1.
No worries, no problem.
But even with it being on the first page within a first few months is huge.
Yeah, it's definitely surprising to me to have it rank that quickly.
You said earlier that one opportunity that you see for the business is to add more content so that the SEO ranking is even better. But to add even more content, that means that there needs to be content to begin with. So what kind of content is there currently on the site, and how frequently is that updated?
Yeah, great question. So right now, I don't remember the exact number of like pages, but right now it's a relatively small site. We have probably 10 or 20 pages, maybe even a few less than that are, primary content, which is like, reviews and comparisons of the product and of different sort of, versions of the product. And then we do have some amount of sort of supplemental content, which we're not really actively trying to rank or anything, but it's sort of add more bulk to the site, add more sort of authority to us being, like writing a lot about this niche. But we haven't really been adding content on a regular basis. A lot of the content was when we initially built the site. We just said, okay, this is what the site's going to look like when we put it out there. And then some of the supplemental content has come like in the past year. We've added a bit more supplemental content. But there isn't really like a buyer, they don't have to keep adding content in order to keep earning money from it. There isn't really like a freshness issue so much with this kind of content. You don't need to always be publishing new stuff in order to get more eyeballs on it. The eyeballs come from the organic, from Google rankings, really for the articles that we originally published. Like I kind of said before, I think that there's a big opportunity in adding more content. So if that's your thing, I definitely recommend doing that. But there doesn't really have to be additional content added in order to just maintain the site and let it, do its earning. And in terms of maintaining the content, which you also asked about, and this is important, we do, and this is pretty much the only like thing that I would say that the buyer, in order to maintain the earnings, really has to do, is we do like every like 3 to 6 months, we go through the site and we just double check. Basically, we're just like going through and we're like doing a check of like, are the links still pointing to the right place on Amazon? Are the products like up to date? Is there any like new versions of the product that's sort of like the more current version? We just sort of do like a sort of audit of the site, you might say, and make sure that everything's kind of up to date. And I think, this definitely helps us make sure that we don't have like links to outdated stuff, which, somebody who's looking to buy a product with, through our site, that's kind of potentially an issue to them. We might lose some sales like that. And potentially, I would imagine, don't really have any proof of that, but I would imagine that it may also help Google, like kind of, they can see in their algorithm, like, okay, this has been updated. If they start to see a pattern of stuff being updated regularly, that's probably a good sign. At the very least, it's not a bad sign, but it's probably a good sign to them. Like, okay, this content stays fresh because, they want to serve their customers, like all of us who use Google, they want to serve us stuff that's relevant, today. So that's another way to kind of keep it relevant to today, is just update it every once in a while, just go through it. This is probably like, depending on how, intensive of a job you want to do, like this takes like main writer who goes through and does this. It takes him probably 2 to 3 hours once every 3 to 6 months. So it's not a big task, but I do think it's an important thing to do.
And that's all the work, that 2 to 3 hours per 3 to 6 months is all the work that is required to maintain the site as is. Now, we're not talking taking advantage of some of the opportunities that we spoke about earlier. We're just talking maintaining as is, keep earning that approximately $2,000 a month in net profit. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And we should talk about seasonality. I don't know if this is the right time, but there's some seasonality that I think buyers should be aware of. But to maintain like the site where it is, just 2 to 3 hours every 3 to 6 months.
Well, before we get to that, I just want to take a minute and mention the fact that this is an Amazon Associates business. And for someone who is unfamiliar with the platform, would you be able to just take 30 seconds or so and detail what exactly the model is?
Yeah, that's a great idea. So Amazon Associates is like, it's the Amazon affiliate program. And the format is basically like, I have a site that has some kind of like reviews or comparisons or something of products that are sold on Amazon. And so we break it down on the site, what are the best versions of this product and maybe best for different, price ranges or different needs or something. And we basically act as sort of a buyer's guide, which Amazon, having experience with it, they're not always that good at sort of the buyer's guide type of things. So people often type into Google, like, what's the best, tissue for blowing your nose or something. And then you might come up with, if you type in a query like that, you might come up with sites like this one. There'll be like the reviews of the different tissues and, which brands are best for different people and stuff like that. And then so you read those sites and you click on the links to Amazon to say like, oh, this tissue is best for this type of person. You click on a link to Amazon to go check out the price or to go buy it. And then if you buy it within the next 24 hours, then whoever owns this site would get a commission, would get like 4 to 8% of the purchase price from Amazon.
You say 4 to 8%. Is there any reason that there is a discrepancy between the percentage that you get in one niche versus another niche?
Yeah, Amazon moved for a long time. They had like a sort of a tiered thing based on how many products you sold. And then this spring they moved to tiered just based on the category. So I guess like there are some categories that in order to be competitive in the affiliate space, that they want to have like a higher reward essentially for referring people into that category. And other categories that maybe their margins are lower on or something like that, so they give a smaller percentage to those. So typically the categories are like 4 to 8%. There's a few like electronics things because margins are really low on electronic stuff. There's a few electronics types of things where they're like 2% or 1% or something. But yeah, it's just really based on the category. So actually it's kind of a good change. It wasn't such a good change for me because I got, a lot of the commissions were cut. But this is kind of a good change for somebody buying the site who doesn't already have a lot of other like Amazon sites or anything like that, because, the buyer will get the exact same commissions that I get from Amazon. The buyer will get with their new account. If they don't have an account already, they'll get the same commissions that I get.
Going back to what you said about the seasonality of the business in terms of sales, the number that we gave at the start of the interview was $2,225 built on a 6-month average. So it is August. We're near the end of August, which is the 8th month. So go back 6 months. That gets us to about February or March. That's not including this, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, you mean the seasonality or Christmas time. So if we're coming into Christmas time, a potential buyer could look at this and be like, okay, I'm about to purchase this business right before the most profitable time of year. If it's making $2,000 in net profit in the months that aren't the peak, what's it going to make in the peak?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and this is probably something like I imagine, a lot of buyers are wondering about it. So this site actually has more of a summer peak. The earnings you can expect, the site, it's hard for me to know exactly what's going to happen because, we've been continuing to rank the site better and better. But, from my past experience with other sites and just from like what it earned over the past year, my guess would be you're not going to see super stable earnings, but over the course of like a year, you will see stable earnings. But month to month, you're not going to see super stable earnings. So what you can expect is that there's a summer peak because this is a product that people use much more during summer. You'll see a summer peak that's going to be like the highest. And then like in the like fall, there'll probably be pretty steep drop off. And then again, like in December, there'll be somewhat of a peak, maybe not quite as high as the summer, but there will be somewhat of a peak. And then there'll be a little bit of a drop off again. And then you'll start seeing people start to buy this product again as they're preparing for, even sort of in spring, even in early spring, they'll start to buy the product again in more significant numbers because they're preparing for the summer. And then certainly throughout the summer, then you have a big earning period there. So it's something that a buyer should expect. There's going to be some seasonality in this. One reason, I'll offer to think about purchasing a business like this now is that you have time to prepare. If you are going to work on it actively, you have time to prepare for the next season. If you bought this business right before the beginning of summer, any changes that you made wouldn't necessarily really translate to results quickly enough to see them during summer. So if you added a bunch of, new content in, related products or something, you wouldn't necessarily see the results of it that summer. But if you add that content now and start putting the links to it, then you're going to see that in the summer. And then the other thing I want to say about that is that the seasonality is pretty much built into the pricing because it's built on a 6-month valuation. You'll see that steady ramp up from February. So that's in the graph. And so in the current price is sort of what's expected of the first, some of the months the earnings are going to be lower. Other months you'll be significantly higher actually than this average revenue. I hope that kind of addresses the seasonality issue. You can expect probably a bump in December, but December isn't the number one buying season for this product. But pretty much every Amazon site gets a big bump in December because it's it doesn't even matter what product you're referring. People will buy anything on Amazon in December. So that's a potential sort of extra advantage, you're looking at that's not built into the 6 months right now.
Yeah, you definitely answered the question. That makes a lot of sense. It says on the listing site that you're referring products that are related to a popular water sport. So it certainly makes sense that in the Northern Hemisphere, it's going to have a peak in the summertime.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've covered a lot of the opportunities for growth for this business. Are there any big risks that you feel are associated with this business that a potential buyer should be aware of?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The biggest risks, I think, relatively to other investments, all these types of sites are kind of higher risk, higher reward. With this particular business, I think that your number one risks are going to be Google and Amazon. So on the Google side, at any point they can change their algorithm. And, the model that I've been using to rank these, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit, the whole PBN thing, sort of the version of PBNs that we've been using is a very conservative kind of, it's not particularly reckless as far as PBNs concerned. It's pretty conservative with the kinds of things we do with the PBNs. And it's been working for many years with Google. But that's not to say that they couldn't, tweak something. And, even if it's not some kind of a penalty, just they make a tweak to the algorithm and the site loses a few spots in the rankings and it still makes money, but just not as much. They could also, this is sort of the risk reward aspect. They could also make a similar type of tweak. And I've seen this happen. They could also make a tweak where, this site gains a few spots in the rankings. Just, maybe some other people are a little bit penalized that were ranking ahead of this site. I have seen that kind of thing happen as well. But, I think that there is some risk from Google that you're taking on. And then on the Amazon side, there's, when you have one supplier, when you have one customer essentially that's paying you, they could decide to stop paying you or something. And that could, really hurt. So, I don't really see, Amazon just redid their Amazon Associates platform. They've just made a lot of improvements to it. It looks to me like they're really investing in their Amazon Associates program. I don't really see it as a particularly big risk factor, but, it is there for sure. And it's something that a buyer should be aware of, that that's a risk. If Amazon were to say, just be okay, we're closing Amazon Associates, no more Amazon Associates. There are other people who sell, there are other websites that have affiliate programs that sell this product. So it's not like it would be like, revenue cut to zero. And especially if you're ranking really well, there's other opportunities. There's always like also AdSense with anything that's like a product related thing. There's like just advertising that you can put on the site. So it wouldn't be like it was cut to zero, but probably, I would imagine that you'd have lower revenues compared to Amazon just because, Amazon is such a powerhouse of conversions, and of selling stuff. Those, I think, are the two biggest risks of a site like this. I mean, it's, relatively to, things like real estate or something, it's definitely like a higher risk kind of thing, but, with a lot of rewards also.
And these kinds of risks are prevalent in any online business to an extent. So it's not like this specific business has these risks and it's the only one of its kind,
Yeah, of course.
Going back to what you said earlier about the private PBN, can you take a minute and first detail or describe exactly what a PBN is for someone who's not aware, and then detail exactly how that deal worked with you moving forward?
Yeah, so this is a really good thing to talk about because I imagine like a lot of buyers are kind of one of the things that they're really curious about with this deal, with this site. So PBN can mean a lot of things, so I want to kind of clarify what it means for this site and for what we do. So what I mean when I say, that has a PBN behind it is it's a private blog network. And I want to kind of clarify that because a lot of people use PBN and they're thinking that they mean private blog network, but they're actually using a service that sells links, which I would actually consider that to be more of like a public blog network. So when you actually look at like since like 2012, when Google started trying to combat like people using PBNs, they've really only had success at taking down public blog networks. Because they're public, they were able to actually like infiltrate them. They were able to like get into, sign up for the service essentially, and then see what websites are there and de-index them. They haven't really been able to, at least not in a mass way, do anything with networks that are actually private and, hosted well and stuff. So we use a private network, and actually a lot of the sites that we have linking to this site, most of the sites that we have linking to this site are also private in the sense that they only link to this site. They don't link to any other sites that we own. They'll link to like some authority sites. They'll use like, they might have a link to CNN or Washington Post or something like that to kind of, give them more of, not just have the link going to this site, give them some more sort of like trustworthiness in Google. But they don't link to other affiliate sites, which is another like, not that this is bad for everybody to do, but having, sharing links with lots of different sites is sort of just like another factor that adds a little bit more risk. So this method of just having it linked to just the one site is a way to reduce the risk even further. So what else do we do with our PBN to make it, really safe? So I am very far on sort of like the conservative side of like how I run the PBN. So we do quite a number of things to really reduce the risks of the PBN. So just for example, like we have it hosted completely on like shared hosts that are used by lots of websites all over the web. So like, hosts like GoDaddy and HostGator and stuff, are hosts that like, millions of legitimate websites use. And that's been a way in the past that Google's also tried to kind of target PBNs is, if they find a host that primarily hosts PBNs, they'll start looking at those sites individually. They'll have their manual reviewers go in and look at those sites individually. We use like these more expensive but better shared hosting environments. We have all our content written by like native English writers, and the content is actually pretty decent. It's actually like interesting content to read. It's hard to say like if we've really like had, if we've ever like specifically passed this test, because I don't know if Google's manual reviewers have actually looked at our websites. We've had like a pretty epically low de-index rate. So of the we have over like 2,000 PBNs now, and only like 2 of them in the past like year and a half have been de-indexed. Which if you compare that to like any other PBN service or anything like that, that's pretty astoundingly low. This is all to kind of say that like I think the kinds of PBN that we create is like really, really safe as far as, PBNs go. You also kind of get the advantage as compared to like, totally white hat links. you also kind of get the advantage of you have control over those links. So if you ever like want me to change a link or stop linking to the site from a certain PBN or anything like that, you just send me an email and I'll change those links. So I think that kind of leads us to like, how does this particular deal, how is it structured? So for this site, there's a $200 a month that the buyer will pay to me to maintain the PBN. Basically, like what we'll do on my end with the PBN is just, continue to host it, continue to just like, we barely make any changes, but we do monitor kind of, the PBNs in general, the SEO landscape, and we just see like if there's, some new potential thing that we can change to make it more safe, then we will do that. So the buyer gets sort of a small discount on the upfront price of the site because, the net profit is $200 less. So the multiple that we're using is going to make the sale price lower. And then they'll just pay that $200 a month slowly over time as sort of like just an incentive to keep those links live and to keep them hosted. And along with that, there's also just the contract that we have is that, me and my team will keep all those links live and keep everything hosted.
So do you think that if someone were to come along and they love the business, but they like to host things themselves, is it possible for someone to take over the business and switch the hosting to their own PBN rather than continue to host it on yours?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I'm certainly open to talking about it, a negotiation about it, if that's something that's important to a buyer. So there's two reasons why I've structured it this way. Number one is I think it's actually just easier for a buyer to do it this way. I think when you add up all the cost of hosting it safely and any like maintenance and what would need to happen with this site, just security for the WordPress sites and that kind of thing, you'd end up having a lot higher costs actually than $200 a month. We have economies of scale essentially with it. So like hosting for us costs like really not very much because we're able to host like 30 or 40 sites on a shared hosting environment. But I think that would be a hard thing to match unless a buyer also has like the same economies of scale. Part of why I put it like this is it's simple and I think it's a good deal for the buyer. And it's just like a simple way to have them be able to start making money quickly from this site. But the other reason that I structured it this way is because we do have some sites on there that have links shared with other money sites that we own. So those sites we wouldn't be able to transfer. It's not very many sites, so if that's something a buyer would want to discuss, I'm certainly open to it. I'm happy to, I don't think it's the right thing to talk about it on this call, but if a buyer wants to talk about why we have those shared sites, I'm happy to go into it. There's a lot of reasoning behind it, but it's probably too technical maybe for this call. But anyway, long answer short, I don't think it's the best way to structure it, but I'm certainly happy to talk about it. I'm open to negotiation with it if that is something that's important to a buyer.
We're definitely pushing our time cap here, but before I let you go, I still have one final very important question for you. But before we get to that, I want to run through the quick summary of the business again. It was built in January of 2016, has a monthly revenue of $2,230, expenses of $205 to make for a net profit of $2,025, which is built on a 6-month average. Included in the sale of this business are the domain, site files, and social media accounts. The buyer will need to pay for the first year of PBN maintenance fees unless something else is negotiated with the seller. Josh, thank you for taking the time here today. I really appreciate it. We've covered a lot of awesome stuff. I really feel like this is a business with a lot of opportunity and very little downside. It takes 2 hours of work every 6 months to maintain it as is, in addition to plenty of opportunities to grow the business if a potential buyer wants to do more than merely maintain. But that's just what I said. What do you have to say? What is your best 30-second pitch on why someone should purchase this business? Elevator pitch me.
Yeah, great question. So I think that it is a business with a lot of opportunity. I think that it can easily be grown a lot. Google favors the site quite a lot. With a relatively minimal amount of work. I think that a buyer could easily add, a third or even as much as double the revenue from this site. I mean, I think that's definitely within reach on this site. Yeah, so I think that the seasonality of it actually provides a big opportunity as well for somebody that can put in the work now and then is willing to like have a little bit of patience with it, can put in the work now and then can reap the profits from it next summer. I think that's also a really big opportunity.
I agree completely. It sounds like a business with a lot of opportunity ahead of it. Josh, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. This is the second one of these calls you and I have done in the last week, so hopefully you're not too sick of my voice by now. But thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
If you're watching this on YouTube and want more information, the link will be below the video that will take you to this marketplace listing. If you're watching this on the listing site and want more information, become a depositor today. All you have to do is click the button, Make a Refundable Deposit, and you'll be given everything you need to review this business. Have a great day.